trustees to order at 5:58 with everyone in attendance. And Kathleen, you have all the names on that, right? All right.
Yes, I do.
All right. First agenda point is the approval of the minutes from January 6th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Are there any corrections?
Tom, I just have one correction. The spelling of my name, it's second part of it is Raftery, Raftery.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I only realized when I was reading them tonight. Sorry.
Wait a minute. What is it? R-A-F-T-E?
T-E-R-Y.
That's what I spelled. R-A-F.
I saw Rafferty.
Oh, well, that's what I've got on the ones I have here, but I'll make sure.
Okay, you know, one of them is correct, and the other part, if we go to section 5.
Oh, okay. I spelled it
yeah.
wrong in section 5. Okay. Sorry about that.
No,
Yeah,
not at all, not at all.
that's right. I see it there. I'll make that correction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right. I have a motion to approve the minutes from Melinda. Do I have a second?
This is Amy St. Ange. I'll make a second.
All right. We have a second from Amy St. Ange. Seeing how we have the first and second, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Anybody abstain? Minutes pass unanimously. Second point of it on the agenda is the public comments. Do we have any comments from the public?
Yes. My name's Steve Lewis.
Right,
18
Steve,
Vernon Lane.
can you also just give your address, please?
Yeah, 18 in Lane, Thompson,
Pardon, what lane?
and Ms. Rack member. And as a resident who thinks sustainability is a very important thing, I know that Tara is later on in your agenda going to give a presentation about reusing 65 Main. I am in favor of that. I think that repurposing existing buildings is the most sustainable thing that we can do. It's important for our students to see that in our high school. And it's very good for Main Street where it's located. I just think it's a good idea and I wanted to voice that opinion.
And Steve, your address was 18 Linda Lane?
Vernon.
Oh, Vernon Lane. Okay.
Vernon with a V, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the comments. Any other public comments? Citizen comments? All right, hearing none, we will go to, oops, hold on. Go to the third agenda point, if I can get my screen to work. It's the financial report. Ola, how are we looking? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Hi.
It was like
so I do have a
watching an
report-
old Japanese movie where your mouth was moving and nothing was coming out.
So I will be sharing what we discussed at the meeting earlier this in January. Just bear with me 1 second. Amy, is it possible that you can enable me to share my screen?
Yep, will do.
Awesome, thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, you're fine. I should have
Let's see.
reached out before.
Okay, should
We're
be.
good. So what I have is the, let me know when you see my document. You guys see it yet?
No.
Nothing.
Oh,
Oh,
coming.
here it comes.
Okay, you should be able to see it now.
Yes.
So what I have here is, I'm just going to start up the top. So currently the town has two different projects on the go with regards to the Tourtellotte Trust. The main is our capital improvement project, which is our windows project. And the other is our general maintenance. On the left-hand side, you see the memorial room repairs and building care and maintenance. And on the right is the Tourtellotte building windows replacement project. So I'm going to scroll down a tiny bit and I'll increase the size of the screen so you'll be able to see. We did have a presentation from Crestwood, who is our financial advisors, but this is just in relation to where we are with some of the funds that were appropriated in the past budget cycle. So as of the 6th of January, we had $24,849 available to us through the end of June for building repairs. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the Windows project, which currently has $271,767. And that includes an appropriation in the current budget year of $250,000. We will be having Bill Birch give us an update on where we stand on that project shortly. So the next page I'm going to discuss is with regards to the funds that we have available with Crestwood for our financial investments. Patrick? So currently, as of the end of November, which was the report I had at the time, we had 2.748 available to us. Our base is 2.35, so we're not going to go any way below that.
So Orla, the money that is sitting for the windows right now, that just sits in a money market account, basically, right? Until time of use.
On another phase of the Windows project to be discussed with Bill. So the next page I have is in relation to funds that we only receive. This is not expendable funds and it's not available to us. It's tied into a trust, and $138,000, but we do receive quarterly payments on that. And then we also have a money market account with Webster Bank, and currently we have $288,000 in that. Did anybody have any questions?
You cut out a couple of times. I'm not sure if anybody else had that. But one of the questions that I had was just the money that is set aside for the window project. Until we use that, that just sits in a money market, correct?
Actually, it sits in the investments. So if you're referring to the 250 that has been appropriated in this current fiscal year, you're correct. It sits in a money market until we need it for operations purposes.
Okay.
Any potential other funds will sit in investments until such time as we're ready to withdraw it.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Orla? All right.
Okay,
Hearing-
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And here we are.
So that was pretty much also, I would say, the review of past expenditures, unless I missed something. Joe or Orla, can you correct me if I've missed something on the past expenditures?
No, that's it.
Okay. And let's move on to number 5, which is discussion of future expenditures. And one of those is Bill Birch. Can you give us an update on where we are?
Okay, so this is the update on where we are with the window project. We have the phases that were already approved, which I believe is A, B, C, and D of phase 2. So we're at the point that I sent a draft contract, Tom. I believe I sent it to you and to Joe. We're at the point, the windows have been ordered. They're on their way. We expect that material to be in mid-March. I guess what the trustees need to do is make a final decision, who is going to put pen to ink and actually sign this contract? Because we need to get it signed and executed so that we can continue on. The next thing is part of that contract. We have a proposal from Cogswell Sprinkler that I believe I also sent to you, Tom, and to Joe, for $4,752, which is to relocate an inspector's test on the sprinkler system in the Tourtellotte building, which I guess when they put that system in the 90s, they thought that one of those old window frames would be a great place to put it through the wall, which is what they did. But now that we're going to restore the windows, we have to relocate that. So we have to move forward with that project also as part of the window restoration. And we need to decide how we want to proceed with that. We can do two things. We can run it through school expenses and then the trust could reimburse us, or you could, I guess the trust could cut a PO and we could run it directly through the trust, whatever suits the trustees. But again, that's what we need to do to get that phase of the project going. I had Cronenberger out, I believe the week before last, to look at those last two phases of the project, because that material has not been ordered yet. And of course, there was a price raise that came through January 1st. We're not sure what that is yet. But also that last phase of the project incorporates the north and south stair tower. And there are some areas there that nobody to recollection has actually seen what's underneath those metal panels. So we need to get up there and do some exploratory work before they can put the final price on those last two phases. And
All right, so Bill, what's the timing on the sprinkler PO? Is that going to, obviously that has to happen before the window project, or does it
Correct.
coincide with it?
No, correct. We need to get that done prior to them starting to put windows in.
Wouldn't that fall under repair and maintenance?
It could. It could. I mean, you know, considering the size of the project we're looking at, it's $4,700. It's relatively short money. Yeah, but you're right, Melinda, that could come out of repair and maintenance.
And then we would just reimburse?
Yeah, we could run it that way.
Is that, again, Joe and Orla, is that how we've done that in the past? Or do you recommend a different approach?
We have done it that way in the past.
Up to a certain dollar amount, I believe, right? And then it goes through us directly?
Or I don't know the answer to that question.
Orla?
Wouldn't-
Yep, sorry.
Wouldn't it be cleaner? This is Kathleen. Now, wouldn't it be cleaner to run it through the trust under the maintenance? If you don't want to count it as a capital project, run it through the maintenance, because you allow yourself a certain amount of money as maintenance.
Well, I guess what I'll do is
We
I
can
like that
certainly do
rec-
that.
yeah,
If it's outside the scope of the project, we can certainly do that.
Yeah. Because I don't like, to me, I want it clean as possible and as transparent as possible. And if you run it through the school, then reimburse, that's messy.
so Bill, can they issue us a invoice on that? And, I mean, we would have to issue the PO, right?
Absolutely, and I'm pretty sure that with, this is our sprinkler contractor, and I'm sure they would proceed with the work under a verbal without a PO number. Orla, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't ever recall the trust issuing a PO number for any of the projects.
Yeah, we have in the past, but we don't necessarily have to do it for each one. But
So either
we
way,
can
this,
certainly issue
as,
you a PO.
yeah, as I said, this is our sprinkler contractor, so if I give them go ahead to move forward, then they will.
All right, and Orla, we would pay that out of the 28,000 or 26,000 that's available?
That's fine.
All
Do you
right,
need a motion?
oh, go ahead. Who is that?
I'm just wondering if I should make a motion that we, approve the spending of $47.52 to relocate the sprinkler system.
I would say we should bring it to a motion, at least so we have a vote on it.
Absolutely, Melinda.
I would agree.
Right
Yeah.
there.
All right. Melinda, you want to restate that again?
I would like to make a motion to allocate $4,752 to relocate the sprinkler system at the Tourtellotte building.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
So,
This is Amy St. Ange. I'll second that motion.
All right, thank
This
you,
is
Amy.
Orla.
Any comment, any discussion? All right, hearing none. I would like to have all of those in favor of the motion that Melinda presented for 4,200, what is it, Kathleen, 4,267?
$752. Bill, is that the right number? 4,752?
Correct, 4,752.
Okay,
Okay.
4,752.
All right, all those in favor, please say yes
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
or aye. All of those opposed, please say nay or no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, passes unanimous. Bill, thank you.
So there's still one, I didn't hear anybody that really wanted to jump up and step forward to say they were gonna be the one to sign this contract for the windows.
oh, who's gonna say?
Well, in the past, I believe, Joe, would that have been something that you would have signed?
I would have signed it, yes.
All right, is there a second signature that's required also?
There was never that in my time have we required a second.
All right, Bill, let me know when you do get it. I'll come on up and I'll sign it with you.
Okay.
Did you see what I said there? Sign it with you?
Well, you know, you're much like Joe Lindley. Neither or I ever wanted to go out on a limb by ourselves.
I was taught by the best.
That's two of us.
There you go. Bill, do you see any other projects? Obviously, we're just getting into the window project and the sprinkler, but are there any foreseeable things coming up? Anything with the museum? Water leaks, knock on wood, we haven't had any.
No, we just, I mean, we just had, let's say in the short term, no, we just had some more roof repairs done, so the building's tight at the moment. The museum, we were pretty well caught up on the artwork, you know, in the last few years. So that's in pretty good shape. The window project is the biggest project.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other capital projects that we've been looking at over the years. If you recall, we wanted to put a wheelchair lift in a closet so that we could get people up into the auditorium to use the auditorium more. And we attempted to get grant money for that, but unfortunately we didn't get that grant. We also were looking at having doors recreated for the Rascavage Auditorium because the doors were changed at some point, 70s, 80s, who knows when, and they took the big doors out. So we were looking at having those recreated to put them back. And, you know, for as long as I can remember, we have had discussion back and forth about the fact that the building itself, the masonry on the building has never really been repointed as far as anybody knows since 1909. It's watertight. We don't have any issues with it, but it's been well over 100 years and that masonry hasn't been repointed. And it's been suggested by more than one that we should look at probably doing that project. And that's gonna be substantial. That's a big job.
Do you have an estimate of what has anybody ever quoted it?
Yeah, we've had, you know, back when Paul was alive, Paul Monaco was alive.
Yep.
He had quoted us at one point, and so Paul was alive, so it's going back quite a few years. But it wasn't an in-depth quote. It was kind of like a shoot from his hip, kind of, it's probably going to cost about this. So when the trustees are ready to move forward with a project like that, then I would suggest that we have a little more in-depth look at what's actually going to be required and get a good price before we move forward with it. But it's something that everybody should keep in the back of their head.
Is it a 6-figure amount or a 5-figure?
Oh, I bet it's a 6-figure amount.
Okay.
I would bet.
Yeah, Tom, one of the big things we need to keep in mind right now is that there is a sizable amount of window work that's still to be done. And the way we left the last meeting was there was within the threshold of our bottom limit, the amount we have to keep in the trust. We
Right.
have enough funds in there to consider the July 1st date. So I don't know, Mr. Birch, if you found there was any benefit to focusing on that activity this summer or not. Did you?
Absolutely. And that's absolutely, Joe. And that's why we're waiting for solid pricing on that last part of the window work.
Right. So
That's why we're waiting with that. And again, as I said, let me be very clear about this, this window pointing and these other things that I've mentioned. I mean, the pointing of the masonry, that's nothing that's critical that anybody
Yeah.
needs to think about this week, this month, or even this year. But they're just things that we should keep in our heads that, it's something that's going to eventually need to be addressed.
yeah, that's our
Yeah.
wish list, right?
Yep.
So in terms of, we don't have many meetings in this organization, the trust meetings, and one of the things that we could consider doing now is we know what the bandwidth is. We know how much money is available. This group could authorize up to a limit, that money being available. Orland would know the number that we would have to limit it to. We could vote on that number now and allow Bill Birch to have the flexibility when the summer comes.
Mhm.
And that's what I would recommend doing at this point. The fact is the money is available and we don't have to come back and vote again. Question is, Bill, you don't have exact numbers.
No, and I won't probably, based on the weather at this point, I won't probably know until, the weather improves a little bit. We have to get a lift up there and take a look at what's really behind those metal panels to see where we're going to go with that.
Right. The amount, Orla, the amount of money that is available to us, let's just use a number of $270,000. I don't know the exact number. But what we could do is we could authorize Bill Birch to spend up to $270,000 with a vote here, knowing that we're going to be secure within our range. And then he doesn't have to come back to us. He knows that we've authorized it. We can go through the rest of the financial machinations after that. So that's my recommendation, what we could do this year. I'm throwing it out to the.
This is Orla. I'm sorry, I lost connection, so I missed part of the conversation. But just a couple of things to keep in mind. If we're talking about phase 3 of the windows, are we talking about phase 2 or phase 3?
I believe it's phase 3, right,
Three?
Bill?
Okay,
I guess we would call it, because when we got the original quote, it was phase 2, A, B, C, D, E, F.
yes.
So
So keep in mind, all monies to be spent on projects has to be appropriated by the Board of Finance through the budget process. So what we have approved for this current year through the end of June is the $250,000 that we'll be using for phase 2, A, B, C, D. If you're planning to spend any additional funds going forward, we need to bring it through the budget process. So for example, I know this had come up in the last meeting we had in January. Most likely, most of this project is going to be carried out at the latter stages of the summer because school will be running through the end of June. So with the great anticipation that our budget would be passed, then it's a no-brainer. Then we can, withdraw the funds from Crestwood as needed in July. But we would not be in a position to remove those funds until the next budget cycle.
So Joe, what you're suggesting is that we increase the 250 to 271. Is that my understanding?
No, they're separate actions completely. The 250, we're moving ahead on, the work's going to be done. So consider that your left hand. Your right hand, we're talking about the next phase. And we're saying, we know we have the funds. We don't have to, I understand what Orla's point is. We have to bring it forward. But from our group's point of view, we can authorize up to a certain amount of money, get our part done, the authorization part done. Then we can move it through another board that has to approve it. But at least we don't have to come back to our own.
That is correct, Joe.
And although we have the funds?
Well, currently they're in the investment, but obviously I don't know what's going to happen in the market over the next few months, but currently we have up to about $450,000, $500,000 to withdraw. I'm not going to withdraw all of it, but
No. No,
Yeah.
but,
well, we just can't withdraw it yet.
Kathleen?
okay, Orla, the 250 that we have for phase 2 that we've already ordered the windows A, B, C, and D. That was in the 2021 budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're looking forward to the 2022 budget.
Okay,
We're going to put 270 in that.
correct. That sounds
And we're
like
not
it.
going to spend it until July this coming year. So we're okay with that because we didn't spend the 250 we've already got appropriated.
That is correct.
Okay, so we can put 270 in and have the 250 that we didn't spend until this, we're going to spend this coming summer in the new 2022 budget.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so that's cool. We can appropriate that money tonight and we'll have a total of, well, whatever 250 and 270 is.
So it'll be like what, 521?
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, 520. Is it 271 or 270? Not that it's only $1,000 difference, but
270.
okay. So if the Board of Ed can bring it to a vote at one of your meetings, at one of the Board of Ed meetings, when it comes up during the budget cycle with the Board of Finance, we'll ensure that it gets approved through that process too.
Does that require a vote from us tonight then?
It does. It's a recommendation. You're going to vote to recommend a withdrawal of 270,000 from the fund.
Okay, can I have somebody make a motion that we approve a withdrawal of 270, oh, go ahead, Kathleen.
I'm going to make the motion. I just.
Okay. Go for it.
Then it goes into the budget for,
It goes
For
into the budget
2022.
cycle.
correct. I'll make a motion that we approve tonight an additional $270,000 to be appropriated towards the window project phase 3.
For
Okay.
fiscal
A request,
21,
not
22.
Fiscal
approval.
2022, yes.
Larry, say that again?
You're requesting it, not an approval.
Yeah, it's a recommendation.
A recommendation,
Thank you.
okay.
Do I have a second with the correction of a recommendation?
Mhm.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Bill, you know your marching orders?
That's all I got.
All right, let me go back. All right, we are at the other business. We have Tira Penn, Jessic, that will be presenting tonight regarding 65 Main Street. And Amy, can you share your screen over to, I believe, Brian, are you going to be presenting also?
Yes,
Okay.
thanks. Yeah, Amy, if you can give me.
Everybody should have the ability to share.
Okay,
Got it.
all right.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having us in to sort of flesh this out to you guys. Obviously, I've come in now a couple of times between a couple of different versions of this trust with different stages of development of this project. And it is at the point where I thought we should make a more formal presentation and start talking about ideas in terms of the trust involvement. So Brian and I are going to tag team this. He's in control of the PowerPoint deck, so I'm at his mercy. But he is one of several volunteers, many volunteers here in town who has been working on this with me, both from a practical standpoint and on sort of the aspirational standpoint of thinking about the programming. Obviously, there's the picture of the house. This is a house that is owned by the town, that was deeded to, or left in the will to the town by the Tourtellotte family, just as the school was. And there's the connection that we want to make for you guys in this presentation. Obviously, you know who I am, Tira Penn. Gessick, by the way, not Jessic, but that's okay. That would be phonetic in most languages, so I forgive you, Tommy.
I failed hooked on phonics.
You're the Director of Planning and Development now since April of 2019, so coming up on my second year here. This is one of the first things I started working on in a very small way, with the sort of hatching the concept for the community garden. And from there it expanded, because that garden is obviously on this property, which the town owns and which is at this time vacant and unused. And then Brian, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure, yeah. Wish I picked a better day to take that photo, but things were kind of rushed. But anyway, I know a lot of you that are on the line right now, and I always feel a little awkward about providing my resume, but I'm going to provide just a little bit of my resume so the rest of you can just get a little bit of my background. Again, Brian Santos, been a Thompson resident for about 20 years now. I have 2 kids that are in middle school, proud representatives of middle school, 8th grader and a 5th grader, Jackson and Gabby Santos. I do a lot of volunteer coaching, basketball, baseball, really enjoy doing as much as I can for the town. I'm on EDC, planning and zoning, building committee, things of that nature. As far as my professional career, I've been a builder pretty much my entire life. My dad owns a drywall company, still does to this very day in New Jersey. I built many of residential homes. I was a drywaller for many years, then I went on to college. And now I have owned and operated a construction company in the Boston area. Actually, it's located in Newton for over 20 years now. And my average revenue per year is about $170 million a year. I have over 75 employees, and let's just say I target anywhere between 30 and $80 million projects is probably where I like to be. And a majority of those projects are school projects that are high-end, sustainable building projects focusing on net zero, LEED platinum buildings. One of which I just got LEED platinum today, which I'm very proud of. It's a 300,000 square foot building that I built in Cambridge. So that's just a little bit of my background, but let's get on to 65 Main Street here. So what's our goal in general overview today? Well, obviously we're here to talk about 65 Main Street and doing a construction project there and renovating one of our buildings. But I actually think it's much more than that. As Tira and I go through this presentation, I want everyone to keep in mind that I think it really is much more than just 65 Main Street. I think this town has had a perception of, the Belden Corticelli Mill area, the Village Hardware area and building, vacancy, dilapidated buildings, things of that nature, right? And just letting things go. And I think it's time that we have a mind shift and the way we think about things and being able to move things forward, right? Because we do have people that are moving into this town, various businesses. Anya, we're having people come in to do the River Mill project. Our Father's Table has done a nice job. Dan down at Milltown has always done a great job. I think we need to show support to those businesses, and letting buildings go, such as 65 Main Street, is not doing us any favors. And I think what Steve said earlier, Steve Lewis, I think he said it just a minute ago in the public comments. It really drove something home for me as a final comment, considering I have 2 children. It's what are they looking at as well, right? These kids are walking around seeing these buildings as well. 8 years of abandonment. What does that say to them? And I think that speaks volumes. So I think this particular project can be a landmark for us and be a high press and something that we're all proud of moving forward to show support in so many categories. So Terry, do you want to kind of start this one off?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's always worth sort of putting things in a context of the history and where things have been. So, and in this case, we'll talk about the history that are the challenges, right? We used to be a mill town. The mill economy has not been active in New England in a meaningful way for quite some time. And Thompson is not different than many, many other communities in having an inventory of mill structures that have, you know, become derelict either because of contamination or because they were unfeasible. You know, and then there was a period of potential revitalization that was interrupted by the 2008 recession, and that hit everybody hard. I mean, you know, part of the reason that my husband and I moved here is because we were coming in on the tail end of the foreclosure crisis that, you know, that hit Thompson very hard, like many other places. I know that every house up on my street, one of our neighbors, when we moved in here, said had been on the market as a foreclosure. And, you know, so that was a real downturn. And now, of course, we're in a very unusual situation economically and socially with this pandemic. You know, these are challenges and you have to acknowledge them. But what is more important is, you know, taking those challenges and rising to them, looking at what you have as your assets that remain to you and the people, the population that is in place, and trying to incrementally, or more than incrementally where possible, but I think realistically, incrementally, building projects, initiatives that revitalize communities, help build individual wealth, and therefore help build community wealth. Those things are all related. You know, and that's a mindset that I've tried to take into the committees and commissions where I was a volunteer before I was hired on staff. And I've very much tried to continue that apace. In fact, one of the reasons that I applied for and took the job was that I was interested in moving to an accountability level in terms of, you know, you can ideate, but then how do you activate? And that seemed to me was something that could only be done at the level of, you know, town involvement, town staff involvement. And I was very fortunate to be hired into that. You know, people found my arguments convincing, which is always a plus. But in addition to that, and a lot of these people that I'm going to refer to throughout this presentation are here tonight, this isn't just, you know, me cooking up kooky ideas in my windowless office. We are talking about a number of different town commissions and committees and boards and other volunteer groups who have taken an interest in this idea as it has grown from this little piece of the community garden to, well, we could do something with that house. Well, what are we going to do with that house that's going to make sense within the community? And, you know, as you can see here on the slide, as a very conservative tally, you're talking about volunteers from the branding subcommittee, the economic development commission, the new volunteer subcommittee of EDC that was founded for the garden, Friends of Garden by the River, the MISRAC group, the Trails Committee. You might say, what, the Trails Committee, what's that? That's because the Trails Committee has also taken on projects that intersect with this in that they are building on assets and sustainable ideas to help move the community forward economically, right? So that's where the intersection of interest comes. You know, so I think just as an example of something that can bring a group of disparate community residents together to work on an idea, this is like a showpiece for that. You know, each time that I iterate this project for a new grant or, you know, a new sort of level that's been unlocked in the development of the idea, more people get interested, more people get involved. And that's the kind of shift I think we should be looking at generally. But obviously here tonight, we're here to discuss it in the context of this project. And Brian, you can move the slide.
Sure.
So, you know, and here's an illustration. I mean, these are real pictures from our community, real people starting this work in the spring of 2019. In the upper left, that's the, you know, initial cleanup of the site. Volunteers from the tech program at the school built those beds with funds that were provided by the Last Green Valley on a grant that we submitted under one of their community revitalization programs. You know, students from Marianapolis came in and did finish work. The volunteer group planted it last year. The COVID thing being what it was, you know, the volunteers decided to maintain it themselves and donate that produce. Blackmer Farms donated vegetable starts. So, you know, this is a pictorial progress report on that one aspect. And the origin of the garden piece was right sort of in that transition when I was coming on staff, was still on EDC. And when Ken was first selectman, you know, he's saying, well, you guys have this budget. What are you going to use it for to really kickstart some of this economic development? And, you know, my reading and my research had shown me that community gardens do have a lifting economic effect on neighborhoods and communities. So that was the initial suggestion. It also came out of the first iteration of the branding committee work, that first concept of the green and growing community, which was a good starting place. It has since evolved to a new phase, and we can talk about that a little later. But even in that new phase, the Thompson Find Your Way, if you look at the logo that's plastered on a lot of these pages as it comes up, it is emphasizing that the greenness, the respect for history, and so that is how that green and growing ethos evolved into something that was a little more open-ended, but still applies here. So again, starting with the community garden, you're taking advantage of the idea that we are both a semi-rural community with a strong agricultural heritage, but also, you know, has this neighborhood that has been in the past a vital, walkable community that had opportunities for its residents, not just to live, but to walk to a place of work, or, you know, to start a business, to live over a storefront business. And a lot of those things went away for reasons that were beyond the control of the town, the floods that, you know, demolished so many buildings, and that were replaced by residences instead. So we're saying, well, let's go back to that set of roots that people do express an affinity for, you know, the greenness, the appreciation for our farming history, and let's apply that to a modern context, the modern context of food security. Thompson is what would be characterized as a food desert. Now, most of us don't notice, right? Because most of us have our own cars. It's at most a nuisance for us to go 15 minutes away to spend our money on groceries. But if you are income challenged and either don't have reliable transportation, or, you know, have to share a car with a spouse or whatever, your options in this community are a couple of convenience stores and a Dollar General, right? So the food security for our most challenged residents is low, despite being a community surrounded by farms producing food. So another thing that's come up during community visioning exercises has been this idea. It's one of the things that people say, wouldn't it be nice if we had a grocery store? Well, I can tell you that Thompson does not have the population density to support a conventional grocery store. They have requirements for the kinds of traffic that go by, the size of the population, but there is nothing stopping a resident or group of residents from coming together to create a local food co-op, right? So this business center that we're proposing, and we'll get to the details of that again a little later, in the 65 Main building would be focused on growing small food system and small ag startups in the community for the residents. And you know that these affinities, these priorities are not stuff we made up, right? There have been several what they call SWOT analyses done. NECOG did them during that year-long branding charrette, for lack of a better term, that was 2017 into 2018, that led into the formation of the branding subcommittee and the work that they've done. When I first came on, we did that big civic gameplay session with 60 people coming together and describing their own priorities, right? So what I'm doing in my office and what those of us working on this project are doing with it is taking the expressed priorities and putting them into something we believe to be actionable. And again, here's your first phase right in front of you. Now we're trying to describe and strategize on how we move to next phases. And you can go ahead, Brian.
So again, just a little bit about our history, what we've learned, and what the steps are that we really think we're trying to avoid, right? So kind of like what I opened up a little earlier with this, the mistakes of the past, right? The demo of the building, Tourtellotte Mill, with really no executable plan for refurbishment, resulting in a large vacant property at a very visible street intersection. I think that has hurt us over the years. I'm not trying to offend anyone on the phone that maybe had a role in that. It is a piece of private property, and it's been just a real, let's just say, a process in order to like get anything done over there. And I think that has a lot to do because it's a private piece of land, right? I know that there's, I've had some sort of role in evaluating different things over there over the years. I've seen various plans set up, some landscaping, this and that, and I think that private word just keeps on coming back into play, and it's kind of just, derailed it every single time. And unfortunately, it's just at a very public space over there, coming down 200, and it just is not welcoming at all. But that's something we can talk about in the future. But right now it's part of our current situation. And then in general, this particular area is years of deterioration of the community from, various street lighting, sidewalks, general landscaping, and then the overall appearance in this particular area. And I know that planning and zoning spent a lot of time making sure that we're rezone this particular area for the redevelopment district. We'll get to that in a little while. And other people have worked very hard on getting the lighting updated and sidewalk grants and things of that nature. So there are things in the works, and it really does start with the little things that equal the big things over time. And those are all very, very important. And then unfriendly regulations resulting in the loss or turnover of businesses with the Village Hardware. Like I said, St. Joseph's going under. That one particular store on the corner right next to St. Joseph, I've seen more turnover in that store than I care to think about, for all various kinds of reasons. But again, this particular 65 Main Street project could be a landmark project for us to kind of kick it off and revitalize the area.
And I just want to, before I talk about the trust here, and Joey Martino, I may call on you here, since this is largely a paraphrase of some conversations that we've had. But just going back to the Belding Tourtellotte site, not a week goes by that somebody doesn't ask me about that site. And in fact, last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, when I was in on the Board of Finance meeting to present the branding package, Jim Bellavance had, come in at the tail end of that and say, well, what's going on with that site? And that wasn't directly related to the branding, except that in as far as all of these things are about perceptions and how we move forward with a fresh face, it's certainly relevant. And what I said to him does, echo what Brian says here. The thing is privately owned. There is a path that the town can navigate to sort of start to move the ball there, but it is a complicated path and it is a sensitive set of circumstances, again, because of the private ownership. So nothing that we're presenting here is to suggest that that does not also need to be done or taken care of. It's saying we have limited control over things that we don't own. The least we can do is take the things that we do own and be an example of responsible maintenance and behavior. So just, I just wanted to touch on that for a second. And now, this is specific here to this body, to the Tourtellotte Trust. And again, this is a sort of a condensation or paraphrase of conversations that I've had both with the late Joe Lindley and extensively with Joe Iamartino. So Joe, if you want to correct me on any of this, please feel free. I won't be offended. But, I had asked him why it is that there was so much ambiguity about the relationship of this building to the trust, because it seems quite logical. The trust is to execute the will of the Tourtellottes, and this was a building that was willed by the Tourtellottes, and yet that ambiguity remains. So in synopsis, it was felt at the time that this body was constituted that the problems with the school were so pressing that that was all they were going to put their energy into. Also at the time, there was a tenant. Teague was still operating in there. And while I believe they probably did have plans to expand out of their forming, they were in there for another 3 or 4 years. So again, the burden of urgency may not have seemed that high. It was a functioning structure. So I would call that an omission of not necessarily oversight, but sort of the assumption that things would proceed in a certain way. Now, Joe Lindley, the late Joe Lindley, and I had a number of conversations when I was first developing this plan. He felt very, very strongly that some plan should be formed which would remit funds to the school for specifically the class trip, but I think in general to the school probably would have made him happy as well, because that was the condition of the will. And the plans that had previously been described had not incorporated that. The alternative for that would be to seek release from the terms of the will by the Attorney General. And for a time, that was what I did actually consider and talk to the town attorney about. But then it dawned on me that, you don't actually have to do that, that there is a way for this building to generate income that remits back to the school. And that can be done partly through fees collected in a small business incubator. But the main piece to me was to rehab the second and third floor as a single rental unit, much as it was originally designed to be for the superintendent, with the proceeds of that rent going to benefit the school exactly as it was originally set up. So in other words, bringing it almost completely back in line with the founders and the funders' intent. And the bottom is just a synopsis from the brochure that you guys get when you join the trust. That it is to the trust is for the maintenance and extension of the Free Memorial High School. I think it is not too much of a stretch to say that this building is already an extension of that high school. The superintendent who lived there was the superintendent of that high school. The one was meant to benefit the other. And that therefore, although the ambiguity because of the lack of specificity in the founding of the trust remains that it seems both logical and within your power to extend that mandate to include this building. And Brian, you can go ahead.
So it's kind of like what I said earlier. This is kind of like a mindset shift, and it's a commitment to revitalization here. And these are just community success stories for some of our local businesses. Obviously, this is the big photo there is Anya, a Milltown Grill at Dan's place. He's done a real good job of renovating it. The Mason House being renovated as well by Anya, and then Frank and Charlene's place at our father's table. I will admit I've probably gained 5 to 10 pounds because of each one of these places over the years. I'm actually surprised that I'm not in this photo right here, because that's probably my table right there having breakfast. But these are the groups of businesses that we're trying to support, and just show that we're trying to have that mindset shift and renovate the buildings that the town owns and contributes to for these businesses. Because obviously these businesses are trying to do something here, and they look very nice, and they're trying to retain good customers and paying customers. So I'll take a little bit of this, Tira.
Okay, well, I just wanted to call a little attention actually to the Langlois before you
Yeah,
go on
sure,
here.
yeah.
Just because, Charlene is on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and her personal sort of narrative about how complex it was to start a business in Thompson under the previously existing zoning regulations was really informative for that commission. And not just for that commission, but for all of these sort of ideas that spring up around what is economic development? Who does it serve? What are the projects that you create, that you initiate, that actually help build your existing economy for the people who live here? I am going to harp on that probably until the day I die. If you don't take care of the people and the places that you have and that already exist, how can you possibly claim to do service or to be appealing to someone coming in from the outside? That is a fundamental concept of sustainable economic growth in communities, and I'll stand by that one forever. So I just wanted to take a minute on that. And Brian, go ahead there.
Absolutely. So the things that the town is doing just to show support of that is obviously the sidewalk repair. Kira's gone out and got some grants to do that. I think having that community connection through sidewalk repair and doing it in the downtown redevelopment area is going to be vital. The wayfinding program that Tira's put together, and obviously the community garden as well. And then the overall plan for let me move my people here. Oh, snap down and bottom, that works better. Obviously the 65 Main Street program over here as well. Jerry, you want to add anything to this one?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like this slide because it sort of shows almost a progression, right? If you're all the way on the left there, that's that's the prototype shed or retail chalet that Dave Eddy built for us for the 2019 Community Day. That's something that started as an idea that's becoming reality. We're going to have 2 or 3 of those on the ground for May 1st, and with the goal of getting 10, and supplemented by tent vendors. Those are for micro entrepreneurs, people who do not have access to a great deal of capital, but who still make things, have something to sell, grow things. We don't have storefronts, so we're giving them storefronts. These are all interconnected in terms of the infrastructure and the things in town that support vitality. That sidewalk thing, that's going to be huge. That is going to be a massive facelift to that Route 12 corridor. It's going to happen. I mean, we've got the commitment to fund letter from ConDOT. That is going to happen this summer. And people are going to be able to walk. That might not seem like a big deal, but again, if you are income challenged and you don't have reliable transportation, if you even if you have to walk from your apartment to catch the NECOG shuttle, it is so much less of a burden on your mind if you can do that on safe and attractive sidewalks. You know, sidewalks, again, have been shown to drive economic growth. They drive real estate values. An attractive downtown boosts real estate values. You know, the wayfinding program, sadly, we did not get the grant that I most recently applied for, but we'll keep plugging at it. You know, we've got some funds put aside to change the sign out in front of town hall from a, you know, poor Rainey going out there with his mittens on to change plastic letters to an actual, you know, a scrolling sign so that you can get real information from the town even as you're driving down. So then, you know, the piece all the way on the end, obviously that is a concept sketch, an aerial of the site, revitalized from the outside. And that was provided by Steve Lewis as a favor to me to support some grant applications. He's also provided some concept sketches of the interior in the meantime. But, you know, each one of these pieces helps to give that facelift. Appearances matter. They matter to real estate brokers. They matter to people coming to look to buy, to come to rent those apartments in the Mill when they're ready 10 years from now. I've said this before at public presentations about that. What we choose to do with the rest of our downtown is going to be the difference between whether people rent space in a building or whether they come to live in a town. Right? Because it would be very easy for somebody to come down here for a real estate bargain compared to the Boston market or the Providence market to rent, but then just drive back and forth to work and never give the rest of the community another thought. So how do we get them to give the rest of the community another thought? And, you know, all of these things are on that list of reasons. You can go ahead, Brian.
You want me to take a little bit of this one, Tara?
Absolutely.
Okay, so like I mentioned before, planning and zoning, we did come up with the new zoning regulations. Those are in place from this past September. And those are offering a wide range of opportunities and ease of permitting, similar to what Tara just outlined for some of the complexities around getting permits and allowing restaurants and other businesses to come on into town. We've really eased up those regulations so people have a little bit more opportunity to expand and make different decisions and make better business choices overall. So I think this is going to just generally expand for our business community. The River Mill Residencies and Community Complex that's under development. The gentleman came in and did give an advanced presentation to P&Z members. That's looking like very promising. What's that, Tara? That's like half of the River Mill complex, correct?
No, well, no, it's ultimately the whole River Mill complex, but
whole
he's got it phased out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I remember only a portion of it was being reviewed at that particular time, but yeah, so there's a massive, you know, revitalization of the River Mill that's going to be taking place. It's all kinds of residences and businesses coming into town. And this is kind of just what we're talking about, is just showing an effort, you know, the town building, showing an effort to these businesses that are coming in, and that we are driven and motivated to get our own buildings up to snuff, and repairing sidewalks and things like that. And then I mentioned Anya, new and growing with the Mason House and Milltown Grill renovation and expansion, and obviously the development of new fresh ideas with recreation. Terry, you want to take on the 11 Village seasonal?
Yeah,
retail?
well, we talked about it just a second ago. So that's the development of those seasonal retail mini stores that are going to be rented out. We're going to have those details set over the next couple of weeks in terms of what the rates are for rentals. Dave Eddy and I communicated today. He knows we need at least one more. We've got the one that's actually sitting over at 65 Main. If I can squeeze 2 more out of him before May 1st, I'm going to be thrilled. But again, we had the proof of concept at the Maker Fair that we did in October, which was just a tent vendor fair, but there were 1,500 to 2,000 people who came through that day for that one-time event. It activated Riverside Park in a way that gave people a reason to congregate. It gave them a place to spend their money, and gave micro entrepreneurs a place to be profitable. So that's what we are developing. That's coming online. It'll be active on the 1st of May. It's going to go all the way through the end of October. And, you know, we've got some pretty high hopes for those. You know, my reading on the topic, wherever those have sprung up, is that they have been sellouts, right? That they get fully booked like from go, and they become real attractions. And another sort of tourist related attraction on the other side of town that I've been working on with the Trails Committee, and I think some of the folks who came in to listen to this meeting had to jump off to go to the Trails Committee meeting, which just started. You know, we're looking at developing the site of the East Thompson train wreck into a more park-like setting with connections and signage, you know, to point people downtown, to really give people a reason to come here and spend their money. So again, small, incremental, but community-based and community-driven enterprises and projects to really build the local economy. It's been a guiding star for me just over the last 2 years. And I think these projects deserve to be not just talked about, but considered, you know, as we're thinking about the other things that we're trying to do to really improve the future of the community. You can go ahead, Brian.
So yeah, we're viewing this as the 65 Main project as really a launch of a critical town project here. It's, you know, it's town-owned property. It's obviously in the heart of the neighborhood. It's a good target project, and it's a marquee project. You know, it's launching that mindset shift that I was talking about earlier, and we're viewing this as something that could be really driven in the press, and something that we can take a lot of pride in, get the word out about it, and really, you know, I don't want to use the wrong word here, but impress the town and say, hey, yeah, we mean business, and say to the local businesses already that we're here, we're trying to renovate our buildings as well and show support to those towns. I mean, those businesses as well.
So here is the general synopsis of what I've worked up for a number of grant proposals. You know, and I'm constantly sort of submitting variations of this grant out there. So just to give you a general shape. So we've already installed the garden itself, and those plot rentals will be open tomorrow for a more conventional community garden type setup. There are some beds that are going to be set aside for youth programming from Teague, the Girl Scouts, and from our own rec department, but the rest of them are going to be plot rent for fee. And we do also have some public park equipment that was purchased and is pending installation. That was funded by grants by the Eastern Connecticut Association of Realtors and the Last Green Valley. COVID kind of screwed us up with that a little bit too, and the DPW got really compressed with their schedule. But we've got play equipment, picnic table, bike racks, all received and ready to go in the ground over there. So it's not just a garden, it's a small park, it's a gathering place. Like I said, it's nice stuff, and it's just waiting to get put in the ground. I'm hoping for early spring, but I have to talk to Rich about that. So then the next step would be to start the rehab of the building in a logical progression. You know, the foundation needs immediate attention. It's the most compromised area in terms of the structural integrity of the building. I mean, it's been vacant for however many years now, and you know, things don't get better if they're not being taken care of. And obviously all of the programming that is subsequent that we've proposed needs a home. it may be possible to put some of this programming someplace else in a short term or even in a long term, but none of those potential locations would have the same sort of core neighborhood value that this particular building would have. As I mentioned earlier, I would propose that the second and third floor be reserved for an on-site property manager. So an affordable housing unit, a work-live arrangement, so a reduced rent, but still a rent that would remit back to the school after whatever expenses for the actual house itself. And then the first floor as that small business incubator. Now, the programming of that I have proposed in a number of grant applications, but in very loose terms, because what I think will make it most sustainable is that those programs be developed with heavy community input. So that's why I say suggested first class projects might be the development of a local food hub or co-op for farmers. It's possible that in the development of the programming, what would come out is that people just really want shared office space. You know, I'm not going to force a square peg in a round hole, but the design of the programming is not exactly secondary, but you know, first we need to have the incubator and then decide how it's best going to work. That's the point I'm trying to make there. As an eventual next phase project, and so you're looking at a couple of years down the road here, but totally feasible, there's an adjacent 14-acre town-owned parcel that goes right across the river there. Right now, it's mostly scrub, you know, trash trees and bittersweet and whatever else is in there. I have proposed that over time, you know, an acre a year, whatever, we develop that as a another river walk on that side of the French River, but with a permaculture emphasis. And permaculture is something I could talk about for hours and hours because it's so very, very cool. But essentially, it's a kind of landscaping that is based on native and perennial plants and plants with food value. So, for example, one of the nonprofit partners that I've reeled into this, and I'm going to talk about this later, but I'll just tell you about this one, is the American Chestnut Foundation. They are looking actively for sites to repopulate the American chestnut tree, which is a high food value crop, which is native to New England, which was decimated by disease. So, you know, the theory would be you could replace trash trees like Norway maples with a development orchard for the American chestnut. That's, you know, one discrete example. It is a growing trend in landscape design in both urban and suburban settings. You know, it's just super cool. But the point being that we have this parcel which is there and developable for this kind of purpose, whereas you couldn't really put a building there. And again, it would have sort of that public recreation benefit. It would have a food system and security benefit, and just beautify the neighborhood in general. So again, the whole point of the whole overarching programming is to find ways to build individual local wealth through entrepreneurship while increasing food security and sustainability for everybody who lives here. And even, you know, in the recreation aspect for people who just pass through. You can go ahead, Brian. So, you know, it's only fair in this presentation, because obviously we're here for a reason, which is to garner your support in a number of different ways. It is only fair to identify what could be obstacles to that support. So, you know, here they are columned out. Obstacles on the left, solutions on the right, the ambiguity in the role of the trust, which we did discuss earlier. And again, I've suggested that the stewardship of the 65 Main Street property is consistent with the logic of the trust in general, right? The trust was formed to enact the Tourtellotte will. This is a building from the Tourtellotte will. It is to maintain and extend the school. It was constructed as an extension of the school. I believe the logic is clear and sound. Funding sources are an obstacle. Local funding versus, and by local I mean municipal, versus grants versus private funds. So because of the ambiguity, there is no clear source of financial stewardship of this property. It's been stated sometimes explicitly and sometimes merely implied that the town is not going to put money into this property, even though they own it. Also, if you are proposing an expenditure of town funds over a certain amount, even for grant matching, it does require going to a public vote. Not the most efficient thing for a project like that, but that is the way the town is constituted. Grant programs generally prefer proposals for complete projects over phased funding. I've been trying to pursue phased funding for the last year and a half, again, because of the lack of a source of reliable matching funds. So I've tried that avenue. I have had very limited success. I mean, Hometown Bank gave us $1,000, which I've got sitting in the bank for when we eventually move forward. But just to say, you know, hey, could you grant us 40 grand to do the roofing, siding, and basement, but we're still not going to have a finished project? That's not super appealing to most granting bodies. They want to be able to get their photo ops at the end, get their names on the plaques and say, yeah, we were a part of this fantastic thing. And then private donations and in-kind value can only cover so much, again, for the grant programs, particularly in-kind. There's often a limit on how much in-kind you can account for when showing that as your matching funds in a grant. Private donations, always hit and miss. You can do okay. You can get some supplemental funding, but I think it's probably beyond the local means to expect them to fully privately donate to fund this program. So what does that mean in terms of the Tourtellotte Trust? What I'm suggesting here is, much as you earlier voted to allocate up to X amount to do a project you know you have on, if you accept the formal stewardship of the 65 Main project, I would suggest that it would be appropriate, whether at this meeting or in a subsequent meeting, to say, yes, we would be willing to commit up to X number of dollars for matching funds to pursue grant opportunities, because that unlocks a whole world of funding possibilities that are currently just not available to us. You know, other challenges, of course, just the nature of democratic government. Administrations change, priorities change. To bring that under the trust would insulate it from sort of political football, for lack of a better term, and just be a project that the Tourtellotte Trust has some stewardship of. It simplifies it, cleans it up, and, you know, makes it less contentious, I believe. You know, and a risk that you can't ignore is the idea that, you know, you rehab a building, you put a program in and the program doesn't work. I acknowledge that that is a risk. There is nothing that comes without risk. But I would suggest that even if we put programming in there and over time it doesn't work, what you have then is a fully rehabbed building that can then be put to another use. You know, and that is, to me, a no-lose situation. Yes, you would take a risk on initial programming. You have your period of assessment. It doesn't work. You change your programming. You still have a building that hasn't been torn down, that isn't a blight in the neighborhood anymore, that doesn't represent lost opportunity, but opportunity taken. So Brian, you can go ahead. Just wanted to reiterate, you know, who's been involved thus far, you know, and this is a very, like I say, conservative accounting of the groups who have been involved. There's a lot of people who sort of work across multiple groups or have just been interested and provided help. but the main drivers here have been the Branding Implementation Subcommittee, the Economic Development Commission, which has put some seed funding in. They did provide match funding for the early round of grants for TLGV and Eastern Connecticut Association of Realtors, some other grants that have come up. The Friends of the Garden by the River are obviously the volunteer group who did a lot of physical labor, cleaning up the site, planting it, harvesting it, you know, being cheerleaders for it. The Girl Scouts are going to be more active on the site this year, and Teague as well. I actually just this past Friday received another micro grant that I applied for on behalf of Teague, because it had to go through a nonprofit as the fiscal, to provide some community tools and a very small cash award to support youth programming there. So that's going to be, you know, actively used by the town's rec department and Teague and Girl Scouts. And then, you know, again, the volunteer labor to build it came from the high school, the public high school, the private high school came in and did some finish work, some sealing of the cedar beds. Members of MISRAC have been very supportive, although not in a formalized way within the committee. But, you know, Steve Lewis, who spoke earlier, is on that committee and did those concept drawings. We have all generally discussed it as consonant with the mission of the Brownfield Area Revitalization Grant that we are wrapping up, that's enabling the installation of those new sidewalks. And then Thompson Together as a community group has been very supportive as well. On the right hand of the screen, you'll see the list of regional, mostly nonprofits who have committed to working on the programming aspect with me. And I have a very thorough grant application that I submitted last year to a USDA program that we did not get funded for, but I have reason to believe we were a near miss for. And I'm going to apply again this year. These are the partners that came together to say, yes, we're going to work on fleshing out how all of this, the stuff that goes on in the building and on the site is going to work. So that's the American Chestnut Foundation, the Connecticut Farm Bureau Association, Connecticut RC&D, Resource Conservation and Development Area. They are working on an agricultural live-work community in Lebanon. So they're going to, you know, advise on sort of where they see strengths and weaknesses from that project as this one here develops. The Eastern Connecticut Conservation District. John Guskowski is noticed here. He's volunteered his time as an independent planner, but he actually just launched his own company, which I believe is called Taiki Project. But so one of the predecessors in my position here in Thompson, the former director of planning and development, who does work with Connecticut RC&D and a lot of the sort of agricultural and sustainability focus in some of his planning for some of these communities. And the Last Green Valley has been a funding partner thus far and generally is supporting work on how we're going to flesh this out going forward. So you can go ahead, and I think this is the last slide coming up. So I just indicated here some of the grant programs, and I apologize that the print is small, but these are examples of the kinds of grant programs that could be unlocked with access to matching funds. USDA Rural Business Development Grants, the USDA Healthy Food Financing Initiative, STEEP grants. I should mention about STEEP grants, the percentage of matching funds is variable, but they only come up every few years. That they did have a round open in 2020. Thompson did not have a suitable project. The requirements are that they have both some level of matching funding, but that they also be shovel ready, which we just didn't have anything that quite fit the bill. But they come around every few years, maybe another 3-4 years. That would then be a more realistic possibility. And then that USDA NEFA Community Food Project, which is the one that I had a near miss on based on the feedback sheets that I saw this past year. They were very, very positive about this kind of whole cloth, community-based sustainability and food system programming. And I feel pretty confident that if we could come up with a more substantial match, that we could get some pretty good funding out of that program this year, next year, who knows? The point is that, you know, these programs are out there and they're currently out of reach, except with some very, very creative in-kind contribution juggling that I'm able to do now and then, but it's just not sufficient to do the whole project. So that's what we've got, and that's what we are proposing, that we would like you to take some stewardship of, a part in it. I know there's folks in here who dialed in to listen in and that they missed the public comment period. Oh yeah, and Brian's got the budget. How could I forget? Take it away, Brian.
Sure. I'll just run through this briefly. I'll start off with, as I mentioned earlier, you know, my company's in Boston, Mass. So rates are a little different in Boston, Mass than there are down here in Thompson, Connecticut. So I did make some adjustments. I did have my chief estimator come down. We did walk the building and we did a very detailed estimate of each and every floor of the MEP system in the exteriors. And just so you guys know, I did have, I'm very friendly with Copeland Builders in Putnam. He also took a review and walked the building with me. And then I had Ryan LaJoy, Johnson Real Estate, just take a look at some things on this as well. And he kind of gave his blessing of the numbers as well. But overall, right now you're at a 3,277 square foot building. And I broke it down into these phases here. I broke it down into MEP exterior, basement, first, second, and third. So MEP meaning the bones of the building. I wanted to make sure that we included each and every floor. So if you were just going to do, you know, I didn't want to say I'm going to do the bathrooms on the first floor, right? It just didn't make any sense. Like, or the heat on the second floor. You're going to do the MEP system throughout the building, right? So I priced all that all up at once. The exterior, it's redoing the roof and the exterior wood cladding, and then also that foundation work and some other structural repair work that Tyra was mentioning a little earlier as well. And then the basement, first and second floors is mostly cosmetic and architectural interior work. So I broke it down into these areas so we could kind of just look at it from budget standpoint. And overall, it's about $74 a square foot to do the renovation costs. Now, keep in mind, this is just the building, very minor landscaping work I included in this. So this is just to get that building totally operational. So we'll just go through a little bit of it. When it comes to MEPs, obviously plumbing, as you can see here, like a new electric water heater. I did all the plumbing fixtures, sinks and tubs and toilets and kitchen sinks and piping for all those fixtures at $10,000. HVAC, we did repair and baseboard heating allowances, putting a new boiler and fluid for 10 grand. So you'd be about 20,000, and then a lot of new electrical work for about 11 grand. And I did include some fluff money in here, design and estimating contingencies, about 5%, and then GC costs for overhead profit and insurance of about 15%. So, you know, 50 grand for the MEP work. And then we'll focus a little bit on the exterior. Obviously, I took care of some of the spread footing stuff, that structural work down in the basement level, doing that form work, the placing, the finishing, backfilling, getting all that structural work done that Tyra was mentioning earlier. And we'll go to the roofing work. Did replace the entire roof up there. So that was about 10 grand. Wood siding. In general, the wood siding on that building is in very good shape. It just really needs to be stripped down. I did carry some wood siding replacement, new clapboard siding at the basement wall. But mostly it is in the painting. and stripping. I got 11 grand for all of that for exterior painting and stripping. Now I didn't include stuff like, volunteer work for painting. I know we could probably get local people involved in the town for painting and stripping and demoing and possibly doing some trim work and exterior work. But I just wanted to make sure that I was covering the cost of the job the way that I see it today, just the way we're all being very cautious and having the right numbers at this particular moment in order to move forward with a good project. Now, as far as some of the interiors, I'm not going to go through every single line here. I'll just point out where I think I carried probably a little bit too much money. It's kind of in shelving and storage and, bulletin boards and islands and cabinetry. I got a lot of money in here. You can see like storage prep, full height shelves. I got $9,000. I was kind of following some drawings that may or may not be the end scheme of things. So there's a lot of things that could be manipulated in this and massaged, but I feel like the project is well covered at this particular junction. And I think a line by line analysis could be had here, but I think we're at a good starting point. And I do want to offer, if anyone wants to go through this with myself at the job site at 65 Main, line by line, I am happy to do that in order to make sure that people understand what's happening over there. So I'll end it at that. I don't want to spend all night going through this particular budget, but overall, we're at about $244,983 to do a renovation project over there.
And I'll just add a couple of very brief points to that because, it's Brian's area of expertise and not mine. When we first approached this project, I had gone to Jason LaValle to do a walkthrough with me, and he just gave me a back of the envelope estimate that did not include any contingencies, but that was in 2019. And all indications were in the ensuing year, because of the supply problems that became so crazy during COVID, that materials costs just went cuckoo. So it did drive quite a difference there. The other couple of things I want to mention is that we would definitely be looking at any place within this budget where it would be realistic to pull in community volunteers. And there's certainly precedent for that within the town. I believe there was quite a bit of volunteer labor that went into the new Teague building. I don't know what percentage of it was there, but certainly it was there. Some things licensed contractors have to do, but not everything. You don't need a licensed contractor to do your interior demo or wield a paintbrush. So there's areas there where we could trim as well. And the other piece, as Brian was mentioning, in sort of the interior millwork or cabinetry, as a part of this project, I would actually think it would be not just responsible, but sort of in keeping with the philosophy of it, to try to source repurposed materials, such as, through the Habitat Through Humanity restores. And that, is another place you can realize some kinds of savings. Is it still a high estimate? Sure, it's a high estimate. But the point is that, with some volunteer trimming and some sort of clever material sourcing, you can bring it down a little bit more.
This is Joe Imartino. I'd like to quickly comment, if you don't mind.
Please.
First of all, thank you very much for putting it together. And Brian, thank you for your professional expertise on this. It's wonderful to see your interest in it. And Tara, it's been a strong interest of yours for several years now. Two comments and then a question. So comment number one is that we know the State Historic Preservation Office will match dollar for dollar. So if we do the right things, we could probably get this done for $125,000 of funds, and the state would give us the rest. Obviously, we'd have to do all the paperwork and the grants to do it, but so far they have been very, very good to work with and flexible as well. So don't underestimate the power of what the SHPO office is doing. In terms of fixing up the church, for example, we're out to bid now for the architects. Architects are capable of giving their ideas of what the church will be to restore, and then that's another SHPO sponsored project in town. A second comment is that the building itself looks to be structurally very good. And so it leads to my question, is there any major leakage in the building right now or something that would take to secure the envelope until the building is ready to be restored?
The only area that was of suspect was the basement level, which I think is known to a lot of people on this call with the foundation repair. But as far as the roof goes, actually it was in very good shape. There was no noticeable leakage or any rot inside the building other than just general humidity in the ceilings peeling. There was no visible water damage.
There may be a little bit around some of the windows.
But nothing of
Nothing that would be
Yeah.
super structurally compromising.
Correct.
That's as of the last time we were there, which was October, November.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. The thing that would have to happen, I believe right now, based on the way the trust is organized, is we'd have to look at the foundations of the text. I guess it's the ordinance would need to be looked at to be able to do what we need to do to extend what needs to be done. And what I'd like to suggest as a possibility is to draft a modification and present it to the trust of personnel for consideration. We'd have to rewrite it a little bit, but I don't think it'd be a far stretch from where we are right now.
And Joe, would you say that my synopsis of our back and forth on that topic was pretty accurate? That because the urgency was not high at the time the trust was constituted, the building was just kind of left off, not like absolutely not, we won't take that. It was just not considered a pressing need. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Kathleen.
I don't agree with that. I do
Yeah,
not agree with that.
I don't agree with that either, and I'll explain
No.
why, but go ahead, Kathleen.
No, I do not agree with that. That will specifically, it did give that building to the town, but the will stated the trust was for the 1909 building. It did not state that it was for 65 Main Street. And yes, you can in your minds make that link if you want to, but that's an inference.
Exactly.
The will did not state that, Joe. And
Yeah,
I don't agree with
absolutely.
it.
Kathleen, I was there with you at the beginning. I know.
Yes, I
remember
know.
The conversations were how we discussed it. And at the time we agreed, the school is the priority, school is the thing, and that's what we're fighting for. And there was more optimism about the building standing by itself at the time. Well, time is pressed. So I'm not arguing that we selected the school as the priority to do it. But I can show you the documents where we discussed the building, the house itself, as is it included or not included? And then we
Well,
elect.
I'd like to see those documents because I don't have those and I'm going by the will.
Yeah, and Joe, I'd like to also see that because I too have had exhausted conversations, God rest his soul, with Joe Lindley.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that Joe always said to me was pretty much the same thing that happened with the school board. The school board was not in the transportation business.
Mm-hmm.
And the trust is not in the real estate business. And he had always said that building was deeded back to the town. And yes, if there was ever to be a sale of the building, yes, it has to come before the trust. I get that, but it's the town that has this building. We're not landlords.
Right.
Right.
I look at, I'm all about beautification of the town, and
I agree. I agree.
We all bleed black, red, and white, which is our school colors. And, I'm not trying to throw monkey wrench into this, but I mean, I'd like to see some more documentation. I mean, I think the presentation was fantastic.
Mhm.
Do I want to see something happen there? Absolutely.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know. I mean,
And I'd like,
somebody.
somebody could take over some funding, yes, but I don't think it should come from the trust because we have a lot more to do that is on the 1909 building. That wheelchair lift is necessary for us. The door replacement, not so much, but pointing the masonry on the building is important. There are things that the 1909 building needs, and to spend $245,000 on a building that isn't worth $245,000, that to me is, that's fruitless. That's crazy. Why would you spend that much money on a building that isn't even worth that much money? And how do you get is that building even going to be necessary? Is that fall under the parameters of a historical building?
Thank you, Kathleen. Could I speak?
Sure.
Yep, absolutely.
So during the whole presentation, a couple things stood out to me. The first was that Tira had mentioned that this is a fantastic thing.
No, I don't disagree.
Maybe I'm not necessarily saying it's a fantastic thing. You know what would be a fantastic thing? A new track.
Yes.
A new community fire department.
Yes.
The other thing that Tira mentioned is that this is a risk. We
Mhm.
don't take risks with taxpayer dollars. We don't.
Right.
If we need grants, if we need to find grants that need to be partially funded, they need to support things like school tracks, fire departments, roads, bridges. And my question is, we toured the building with Sean Copeland from Copeland Builders.
Okay.
Where is his quote? Did he submit a quote? Because I haven't seen that yet.
Right.
No, he did not, Amy. He utilized mine. We reviewed mine.
Okay.
Okay. Well, okay. That makes no sense to me, but that's
Well,
okay.
I think you would have to pay for his. I mean, I'm doing it for free.
Okay. Well, you know, I don't agree with the fact that the 65 Main Street building falls under the Tourtellotte Trust. That's my main contention there. I also don't agree with spending that kind of money on a building that isn't worth that kind of money. If I were to put that on the open market, I would not get $245,000 for that building. It would never sell for that. I do agree that we should fix up that building. Maybe we should certainly go ahead with the projects, but like, we've got better things to do.
And I guess I question the idea of shared office space when so many people have offices out of their homes right now. I don't see it as, I don't understand the concept of a business incubator in our tiny town. So, but that's just my opinion. But ultimately, it's still up to the voters. The voters need to approve the spending of any kind of money in this amount. And I have to answer to those voters.
Right.
Sure. I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with you. In fact, you know, we mentioned that we are aware that expenditures, even for matching funds over a certain amount, do need to go to the public vote. It's just the way it's all written. So the idea of, you know, requesting of the trust that they consider that this is a part of, that it is consistent with their general charge would be a way to sidestep that. These are not taxpayer dollars. To Kathleen's point, are there still things to do up the school? Of course there are. At no point would I be suggesting that this would replace your priorities up at the school. I'm just suggesting that it would be dovetailed to them in a way that makes sense for the trust should you choose to pursue it. In terms of other grants, I write multiple grants all the time, as you know, and have my eye on several grants for several projects, including community fire station and the track, if that becomes necessary, or whatever there is. We are in the same problem there that we are with a lot of things. We've failed to plan for them over the years, so the matching funds do not exist. I look for grants that don't have a matching fund component wherever I can. and I try to apply for grants for projects that make sense for what is in front of us at the time. I have not submitted this project to the Rural Facilities Grant because there are no matching funds, much as I haven't submitted the community fire station to CDBG because I don't have a plan. You know, we have multiple things at any given time that we could be addressing, and this is one of them. And I am suggesting a potential strategy by which it could be addressed.
Kira,
I
can
think
I-
that it is favorable overall, but it's up to the trust to decide if they agree.
Kira, can I ask you one quick question on that?
Of course, Tommy.
So the total was like 245, but of that you were looking for matching funds. So what, obviously you're not looking for 244,000 from the trust if we even went down that road. What would be the seed money that you're looking for in order to generate matching funds somewhere?
Well, realistically, the maximum I would be looking for would be half, right? Because the most you're looking at in most cases is a one-to-one match. Now, in one-to-one matches, depending on the program, some of those things can be in-kind services. That's why I'm saying we could, you know, try to figure out where we could trim some of that. Some of those things can come from private donations. So a maximum would be half of whatever the project value would be stated. So you can use roughly 125 here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it would have to be 125 or that it would have to be tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. I think Melinda had a question and then Orla also. All right. Melinda?
So I have a question. I know that this discussion came up before the Board of Trustees before, and we took it to vote and we voted it down. So I'm not really sure why it's being resurrected. And then the second comment I need to make was when the general store was being restored upstairs, and I had numerous conversations with Joe Lindley about the overall vision for the Tourtellotte High School building. And one of the things that was paramount and part of my evaluation along the way was to open up that building so that the community could enjoy the museum and have guest speakers come in. And that's where we got tripped up when we tried to make the auditorium accessible because we couldn't get people who were handicapped into Rascavage. And so the mission that I was charged with when I got hired as superintendent of schools was to put a lot of effort around opening up that building to the community and really making it a vibrant part of the community. The only discussion I ever had with Mr. Lindley around 65 Main Street was around the fact that if that building property was sold, then the proceeds would go to subsidize the DC trip. And I do recall many times him warning me that he fought long and hard to make sure that the trust was established and that there was a specific mission for those dollars, and that he asked me to be sure that I would attend all those meetings and make sure that the mission and the vision of that building was never lost. So I'm just making that comment.
Orla?
Thanks, Tom. Just a couple of comments to make. I think it's important. Yes, the price tag of 244,000 seems shocking to anybody, but we do need to keep in mind that we are likely to get 50% of that back with the matching funds. Yes, it is hard to imagine the trust appropriating even half of that when we know there's so much involved. But at the same time, we have to remember that this building will generate revenue, which will go back to the school, regardless of what. So that's something that we should keep in mind during the whole process of discussion and any decisions that are made along the way. The other thing we've got to keep in mind is Tara she works in planning, community development. She works in EDC, and the idea is that we're trying to grow our town. This is part of the growth of our town. The reason why she's coming back to us is because everything that is carried out at that facility is going to benefit the school. So we're all talk about, it's very important that we talk about, there's a big debate with regards to what we're going to do with merging the two budgets. Well, the reason why we're looking to do that is to ensure that both entities are one entity and not just one. So it comes down to that here. We have to keep that in mind. The majority of the trust members are more involved in the Board of Ed than they are on the town side, but Amy and I are on the town side, so we see the other side of this. Well, I think it's extremely important that we don't forget that. Anything we do and anything we decide to do with regards to 65 Main is going to benefit the town and the school. So, and we're not looking to make any decisions here tonight. I mean, we've 7 members of this board and it's a bigger conversation, but I don't want anybody on our board to shoot it down, because this is an opportunity that we haven't seen before. And there's been a huge amount of time and effort put into this by the branding, by Brian and by Tira and the other people involved and the partners that they've got involved in this project. So I know this seems like there's a lot of negativity coming from the board tonight. I really want you guys to go away and really think about this again, because I don't think it's something that we should shoot down immediately. And I do respect what Melinda's saying with regards to what Joe wanted. Everybody wants to ensure that everything that Joe wanted of this comes to fruition. But I can't imagine that he would be against doing something as a town, both as a town and a Board of Ed with regards to this building.
If I may, just regarding Joe Lindley, and I want to be careful here because I knew him the least long of any of you. But in terms of this project, he and Joey Martino and I discussed it quite a bit near the end of his life. And I don't want to put words into his mouth, but and Joe, you can maybe back me up here because he and I did do so much discussion of it. His feeling on how we should approach the project definitely evolved. When he first talked to me about it, I would say that he was very much in the camp that has been described, that he really thought that the town should seek the Attorney General's permission to sell it, give the money to the school, be done with it, that it was an albatross. But as he came into a visit that we had with SHPO, actually, a circuit rider came out, and as we were describing, at that point, just the beginnings of the idea of this, he definitely shifted his point of view to where he was in favor of trying to move forward with this project. And I believe there is a set of minutes from the Tourtellotte Trust from November of 2019. So it was a different constitution of this body, but it was the 2 Joes, it was Orla, it was Ken, who was first electman at the time. Melinda was unavailable at that meeting, but she had indicated her support for the general shape of the project. Now the project has evolved. It has become more fully described. We have come up against a different angle of resistance from some people, but those are the obstacles for which we're looking for workarounds, solutions, answers, right? The way the program is meant to work is valid. And as to, whether people go to business incubators, people do go to business incubators. They pop up all over the place. Now, again, if we put programming in place and it doesn't meet expectations after a period of evaluation, then you change your evaluation. You've still got an asset that's now worth something where it was worth nothing right now. It's just an eyesore in the community. So, to admit that there is risk is just being forthright. There's nothing that we do that isn't risk, that has value at the back end. You try to minimize your risks, and that's what we do, in describing the programming, developing it, trying to find the responsible sources of funding to supplement, whether it comes from the town side or from the trust or wherever. It's just acknowledging that there are obstacles that you have to clear. But to say that we aren't going to take any risk is just to say we're going to have what we have, because that is an expression of taking no risk. is what we have now.
Tom, may I jump
Yep.
in?
Please, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, this is Rob Wurge. I'm probably one of the newer faces to the group, although I've been in town forever. Didn't go to Tourtellotte and don't, I'm not super close to the history of what's happened here, but I've been listening very closely. And, it feels like there's ways to describe the connection, and there's ways to describe it as being disconnected as it relates to the will and the formalities behind it. But I'm kind of, I listened a lot to what Orla said, and I would support, asking folks to be open-minded a little bit here and at least think about the benefits to trying something different, the benefits to being a supporter of it. It doesn't mean we need to be the sole supporter, or we need to think about half of it or a quarter of it. But, I think just an outright no to me doesn't leave a lot of other options. And I'd like to see better things happen in the town. And I think, taking a chance, sometimes that's what it takes. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be wildly successful. I think the absolute downside, if the wheels totally came off and it wound up being not a very good project at all, there's still value in the asset. So I think I lean towards trying to be open-minded and see what we can do to support the project here, support the enthusiasm. I think if other funds became available to get to that halfway mark, this could be something that could be really good for the town. It could change in a positive way and push momentum in a positive way in an area that, quite frankly, doesn't look good today. And if we don't take advantage of the energy that's in front of us, we may not have that tomorrow, right? There may be other options that are far less desirable tomorrow than the options that we have today. So again, I just ask folks to think about it. If we're not going to make decisions tonight, we can get back together on a special meeting if we have to, but at least debate it a little further. That's all.
Melinda?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rob. Melinda?
And so I really respect those comments, Rob, and I certainly respect the work that Tira and everyone has been doing to revitalize that part of town. You are absolutely right. As an outsider driving into town, impressions matter. And so, I value that. I value that for the school system. But my question is, you mentioned stewardship. So does stewardship mean taking on the full liability of that building under the trust umbrella? I guess that's a question I have in my mind.
If you're directing that at me, Melinda, I'm not sure that I have the actual answer to that question. I mean, the town does own the building.
Yeah.
So, the functional liability of the building, I guess, would be the same as any other town-owned building or structure. So I think that's where your question was headed. But as to the specifics of that, no, obviously I can't answer that.
Well, then I have an input to that. If the trust does the seed money for the matching funds, if we agree to that, then the ongoing maintenance of the building, that would lie on the town. Or does it fall on the trust?
No, it would fall on the owners of the building, which would be the trust. So as I have envisioned it.
No. The town owns the building.
Yeah, the town owns the building,
is
Tara.
to the town.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
then.
that what I said?
No.
Oh,
You
I'm
said
sorry. Then
trust.
I misspoke. I'm sorry. That was
Right.
an error. No, so the town owns the building. So as I have envisioned it,
Mhm.
the maintenance would be taken care of by the rents, either of the rental unit or the combination of the rental unit and the programming for the business incubator, right? And then whatever is excess over that is what gets remitted to the school, exactly as it was set up in the original will. That was, the rents took care of the building, and then what was excess went to fund the school trip.
Right, okay, that presupposes that we that somebody actually rents the upstairs, that and pays. If you're thinking of this manager / you're going to give them a reduced rental rate, that that presupposes that we actually make any income from this thing. So then it falls on the town to keep the maintenance of this building up, like painting every 8 years, leaks, plumbing problems, the roof replacement every 25, 30 years. It, you know, it's a joint combination between the school getting the income and the town paying the expenses. Then that's kind of out of whack.
Well, I'm certain that the structure of the whatever income intake, whether it be through residential rental or program rental, could be designed in a way that makes sense. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
No, we haven't. And I agree what you're doing down there is wonderful, Tara. Don't get me wrong. I think the community garden is fabulous. You know, I kind of like, let's fix the outside of the building so it looks nice and leave the inside alone for a while. You know, that would be great.
That was an avenue I was trying to explore, was partial funding of phases, but that's why I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to get a grant for a partial project.
Okay.
People want to see things done. They want to come with their golden shovels and say, look at what we finished. Here's the plaque. We have a piece of this. It's just a harder lift.
Okay, I understand, but you know, I'm not in the same area that you're in. Yes, Amy?
Yes. Rob Werge, thank you for your insight and input. And I don't think it's a matter of us wanting to shoot something down. I think we just want to see clear-cut plans. If I was to have a startup business and I needed to go to the bank for a loan, I would have to have a business plan in place. I've done it before. I've done it a couple times. I have a business plan. This is my projected income. This is, we're guaranteed to make this much money. There's too many unknowns. And I agree, without risk, there is no reward, but there's not enough concrete evidence that this is going to be a sustainable project. There's just not. You said, well, we haven't worked out those details yet. And what happens as a landlord when the renter decides they don't have money to pay you that month? Because I've been a landlord and that really stinks. And who gets the call in the middle of the night that the furnace stopped working? Who's going to get the call? Leslie in recreation, or maybe you, Tara? I mean, these are things that have to be answered. I love the idea of all of this, but give me the facts. Because if you were to go to a bank and ask for money, you would need those facts. If you're going to go to the taxpayers and ask for money, you're going to need those answers as well. And that's, I have to answer to the taxpayers. And that's just the way I feel.
Unfortunately, we can only take the programming so far in terms of the description because we don't have a facility and we haven't been able to move forward with designing the programming because we have not received those grants yet either. So yes, there is an aspect about this that is hypothetical or planning, but that's why I said we don't need to say we're going to have half of this money on a check to you tomorrow. It's endorsement of a concept, right? And we can move forward with fleshing these these details out wherever people find that there is a deficit. This isn't specific enough. Okay, we'll move forward on making this more specific. And at some point, because there has not been any funding, there has only been planning and development going into this, we're going to come to a hard stop where I'm not going to be able to flesh that out anymore. But I am always willing to do the additional work to hang more flesh on those bones.
Tara, again, I mean, I commend you on the presentation, and Brian both. I mean, thank you very much for the volunteer hours of putting together the project. I think Amy raises some very good points about obviously a business plan. Myself, you know, starting multiple businesses, I understand all that aspect of it. The other part is, as we move forward, what are the ongoing expenses of that building? So can we have that laid out? The other part of this is, I know you just talked about the seed money, which you know, look, half is more palatable than $250,000. Half of a half or a quarter of that would have been even better, but I understand what you're asking. I still have a hard time with the trust being a landlord. But, and again, I'm going to be very open-minded, okay? I'm not saying no, and we are going to obviously have a special meeting with the Board of Trustees to discuss this in private. I don't know. I want this town to succeed. You know, my comments about, you know, when you drive into town, the first thing you see is the dilapidated fence over there with the mills. So by no means, I don't want any of my comments tonight to be taken in a hard, concrete, negative fashion. And I think that goes for everybody. I don't want to speak for everybody. I just think there's too many what ifs right now that we still need answers to. So I hate to ask you to go back and just do a little more homework on this, but if you can get the ongoing expenses, I know that property was appraised. I don't remember what that was. I remember seeing it one time. If you could please put a little bit of that and just, you know, get that sent out to us. And then I promise we'll call a special meeting and we'll review this again.
Sure, Tommy. I mean, like I say, I'm always happy, ecstatic, in fact, to to provide more detail. What does work well for me is if individual trustees have specific questions to email them to me. I work very well off sort of the written word,
Yep.
you know, and that helps me sort of organize the kinds of information you're looking for.
Absolutely. So let me do this. We will get at least an email out amongst our trustees here with questions, and we'll send you one document that has the questions on it. So this way you're not getting inundated by multiple emails.
Perfect.
Is that fair?
Perfect.
Okay.
Great idea.
Any other comments on this topic? All right. I think we had a very healthy discussion and a great presentation again. And again, I think we all have one thing in mind, which is moving our town forward. What that looks like in the future, we're not sure, but I think we're going in the right directions, at least having these discussions. Okay, Brian and Tara, thank you again. Really, really appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Tommy.
You're welcome. Do we have any other topics that need to be discussed tonight? Because I believe the last part on there was an adjournment. Are there anything else from the Board of Trustees? No? All right, so Kathleen, Melinda, Joe, Orla, Amy, what I'll end up doing is I'll send out an email, and Rob, and we'll see if we can get some questions that we may want to have Tara answer.
Okay.
In addition to that, we can look at possibly having a sub meeting, special meeting. We can discuss this further. And I believe that is it for right now for open items. Is that correct?
Correct.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
First night on the job. It
Great
wasn't
job.
easy.
Did great,
You
Tommy.
did a great job.
Um,
You did a great
good
job,
job.
Tom.
Oh, you want to take it back?
Buddy, you got it.
Oh, thank you. All right, hearing no other further discussions, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make Amy St. Ange to make a motion to adjourn.
Can I have that seconded, please?
I'll make the second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no, nay. Any abstentions? All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Be safe. Happy shoveling.
Happy shoveling.
8:07, Kathleen.
Oh, 8:07. Thank you, Rob.
Well done, Tom.
All right.
Thank you.